Welcome back for the second hour of County Matters. I'm Corey Blose and I'm covering for Bill Hensley today, who's carrying out his civic duties as the town's mayor. In the first hour, we talked to Sir Peter Brown about the fire authority. In this second hour, I'm talking to political blogger and democratic activist.
I'm definitely an activist, yeah, I'd say so.
Richard Taylor. He usually, you'll see him around at various council meetings, blogging about what's going on and generally trying to open up local government, aren't you? So we're going to be talking about an incident that happened, is it a week or 2 weeks ago now?
It's just over a week ago. It was not the last Thursday, but Thursday before.
Thursday before, where Richard went along to a Huntingdon District Council cabinet meeting.
Full council.
Oh, full council, sorry. Following some advice from Eric Pickles, the Communities and Local Government Minister, who said that the public should be able to film council meetings without anything preventing them from doing so. So Richard went along to test out this theory and videoed the results. And actually, he was successful in getting a video of the meeting that's now up on your blog and I think on YouTube and a few other places. So we're going to be talking through why Richard went along, what happened when he was there, and just generally some of his views about opening up government. But if throughout the show, if you've got a question for Richard, you can get in contact with us. You can give us a call on 01480 414 104. You can email us at studio@hcrfm.co.uk or countymatters@hcrfm.co.uk. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Just look for @hcrfm or facebook.com/hcrfm. And of course, you can text us as well. Just text HCR, leave a space in your message to 60300. Text messages will be charged at your standard network rate. Good morning, Richard. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Excellent, thank you.
Good. You found us okay then in this lovely weather. You found your way to Huntingdon.
I did, yeah. I think it's going to get hot and hotter during the day. It wasn't too bad driving over here this morning. No.
Yes, yeah. It was certainly a hot one yesterday, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. Okay, so you've come in to speak to us this morning because you made the local news last week, and actually national news now, hasn't it?
It was,
It's been picked up by the BBC and a few other places. Following your attempt your successful attempt to film the district council meeting and then posting the results on the internet. But before we get on to that, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, what your connection is to the local area, your background, your day job, things like that, how you got into being a political blogger?
Well, I moved to Cambridge after doing university in London in about 2001. So I've been in Cambridgeshire now for a decade or so. And I moved to do scientific research. I was a researcher working on viral formulations and viral vaccines and things. But what I do in terms of the activism and promoting democracy and things is quite disconnected from what I do on to earn money on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, and what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
I work with biotechnology publications and scientific material that's online, and I work with companies to do things on their websites and marketing stuff. So
quite different.
I do. They're completely different and completely unrelated, yeah.
Yeah, so you do consider yourself to be an activist, mainly promoting openness and transparency and representative democracy. Could you just tell our listeners about this and what kind of activities that involves?
Well, I'd say it is just about taking interest in how our society is run, really, and about about asking the question: is our society run in a way that I'm happy with, and where it's not, then trying to get involved and do something about that. And I think a big part of that is opening up our democratic process, so opening up our what our councillors are doing, writing about that, doing things like filming, showing people what their elected representatives are up to. And I do this in a way. I track what our local MP does in Cambridge a lot. I put clips of him on YouTube. I tweet about what he's up to quite a lot. And I also I write stuff on my own website. And I just basically I try and find out about what's going on and publicise and share it.
Okay, and your website, this is a blog, isn't it, your website, effectively?
Well, people...
Or is it more than that?
Well, people come up with all sorts of terms for what I'm doing. Am I a blogger or a citizen journalist? Or I just say I'm just someone who's taking interest in the way our society's run. And I think it's quite important that if you do something like make a representation to a council or go and speak at a council meeting or write to your MP about a policy matter, and I think it's right to do that all in public and to put it all out all out there, which the web, Twitter, a blog, it all makes that easy to do. So I think that's kind of the right way to approach these things, and it also it helps people get behind you, or helps you enter debate. If it helps you find out who's opposing and why.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly are seeing more and more now that the internet is allowing people to become more politically engaged, isn't it? I mean, you look at not just the events in this country, but events across the world. The internet and blogs and people opening up government in this way is causing ripples all across the world, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is, and as well as around the world. What I've done in Huntingdonshire is being copied around the country. People are getting in touch with me or commenting on my blog saying, well, we'll try this strategy in other places, and we're seeing people doing this in other councils, and a number of them have got in touch with me saying, well, what advice have you got, and people really want to copy, and they want to open up their own local councils as well.
Yeah, and how long have you been running the website?
I've done it for quite a few years now. I think it's 2006 or 7 or something I started, and certainly I've been publishing stuff online, and I've been doing this sort of photographing and trying to film council meetings for quite a while as well. I think it's in 2008 or so I took my first photograph in a council meeting. I put it up on my website, and there was just no comeback and no particular comment.
Right.
I didn't realise myself either that it was something that shouldn't be done. It was the vote on the planning decision for the Cambridge Station area redevelopment, and my photograph is actually the only record of who voted which way on that key planning decision for Cambridge.
Oh, so did you take a picture of like the tally of?
I took a picture while they had their hands up voting.
Oh, wow.
And the reason for doing that was at the time I didn't know all the councillors, and it was the only way that I could get a record of what had happened, as well as to illustrate my article. But there was no comeback from that, and it was only when I took my phone out at a full council a little bit later on in Cambridge City that I found out that it was not allowed, because they sent the sergeant at Mace. They have someone, council officer called the sergeant at Mace, who does some of the ceremonial aspect of the meeting. He walks in front of the mayor and sits there in uniform during the meeting to keep order, and he chased up the stairs to the public gallery and told me I wasn't allowed to take a photograph of what was going on. So that was the first time I found out that you weren't allowed to take photographs in council meetings. I just assumed that the councillors would encourage it because they'd wanted people to be interested in what they were doing, but I found that that's very often not the case.
So you're very much surprised then when he came up to see you and tell you that you couldn't do that.
I was completely astonished. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what kind of traffic do you get to your website? Do you have a lot of people coming to visit it? Can you track that?
Yeah, of course, we track that. So there's a couple of hundred people a day generally, but then it of course depends on what I write. If I write a good article, that'll go up dramatically, and it also goes up as we approach election periods an awful lot, and it goes sort of over 1,000 people a day if it's a good article or sort of approaching the election time. So. And then there's Twitter as well, and you've got around 2,000 or so people following directly, but also other organisations with strong local followings will retweet things that are of relevance to them.
And do you find do the councils follow you?
I think the councils do. I don't think they particularly engage. They engage sometimes. It's a bit mess. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't think sort of public figures or councils. I don't think we should expect them to reply to every tweet. Twitter isn't that kind of medium, but some are better than others. I don't think I very rarely get a substantive response on Twitter from Cambridgeshire Police, for example, but Cambridgeshire County Council, yeah, occasionally they'll pick up something I've written and reply to it.
Okay, and how did you become involved in this political activism, and what was your motivation to do so?
Well, I think in Cambridge, it was policing related. I was actually speaking to one of the candidates for the local election on the doorstep and talking about the problems in the area that I lived in. And I was actually quite surprised when he told me that we had local police priority setting in Cambridge by councillors, and that was a way that I could sort of influence the policing of my local area. And I had no idea that was happening. And I think it's something that's now got more common and people are more used to it. But at the time, that was... That was very, very, very new in Cambridge, or it was a very new thing, and Cambridge were leading the way. So that's what got me particularly interested, and it was that made me sort of turn up to my first local area committee meeting that we have in Cambridge, and sort of saw my local councillors in action for the first time.
Because that's very much your focus, isn't it? Is police and crime and legal aspects, isn't it? That's what you tend to Is that your main focus?
Well,
I read on your website.
I think we've got the sort of democracy, openness, transparency aspect, and yes, also I think my concern is more sort of the relationship between people and the state, and sort of civil liberties and things like that. And of course, the sharp end of that is policing. So, for example, recently I've been commenting a bit on Twitter about there to be a review of police stop and search powers, for example, and I've been taking interest in the way that stop and search and stop and account prior to that has been operated in Cambridge, and then of course we had the police and crime commissioner elections, and that was something then I decided to follow, because I thought that might be an opportunity to sort of reshape policing and change some of the and change the way the feel of policing when you are interacting with the police on a sort of when they stop you or interview you, arrest you, and that kind of thing.
That very much frontline aspect of it.
Yeah, that contact with the public, and that's really the area of policing that I'm interested in sort of seeing improved, and the police public relations.
Okay, and are you a member of any political parties or activist groups, or do you do this completely on your own? I'm
not a member of any political parties. I have joined a political party quite a few years ago now. I joined the Conservatives. I joined them for 1 year. So I signed up and then I didn't renew because I wanted to see what it was like on the inside of a political party. And what I found there was no way to influence the policy making process. And so for me, I didn't see the point of a sort of a political party that is sort of top down in that way. Now I understand that political parties are actually, they're all very different. Like you see the Liberal Democrat conference on television, you see sort of local members from Cambridge sort of presenting motions. They get supported by the party conference, and then MPs go away and lobby on them. So I can see other political parties do work well, or it's possible for sort of a political party to function in an open and democratic way, but they certainly don't all do. And even at a local level, like Cambridge is run by a Liberal Democrat council, but their group meetings are closed, and you don't find out about how they've come to the policy positions that they've arrived at, and that there's no way really for members of the public to influence what they or what they're doing, other than perhaps by doing something like I do, by sort of writing about your views online and sort of putting them in front of councillors and hoping that sort of occasionally, as I know sometimes they do, that sort of a party member might bring them up in a group meeting.
Yeah, of course, getting out there and voting on the issues as well is another way to try and influence that, isn't it? Maybe limited, but it's a way of voicing your opinion, isn't it, on a party's policies? It
is, but I think we need to actually start considering who's going to be on the ballot paper, because I think too often by the time the election is underway, and you've already got generally just the party candidates on the ballot paper. So I'd like to really open up local elections, and I think the run up to the election, the opening of nominations should be a lot better publicised to encourage people who are not the tiny minority who are actively involved in political parties to get themselves nominated. So when I was a student in London, something we did before student union elections, and I actually think student unions are a fantastic sort of foundation of our democracy. What we did there is the nomination sheets, you put your name on them and you posted them up on notice boards, and then people sort of went to look, and if they wanted you to see you on the ballot paper, they'd sign up and nominate you. So that kind of thing we could do. We could either do it physically on notice boards around the county. We could have some kind of online system where people who are prepared to stand say so, and then people sort of sign up, and you see if you can collect sufficient nominations and see if you've got the support behind you.
That might be a good way. If the political parties obviously want only their members to vote, don't they? Because they want that membership fee. But it could be a way they could increase their members, couldn't it? They could put their ballot papers up and say, if you want to decide on who this is, join the party. It's another way, isn't it?
I think that could be one route. But what problem we've got is we've got membership and involvement in political parties is dropping. So but people are still electing them, and I think when people vote for a political party representative, essentially what they're voting for is for decisions to be made in closed doors in group meetings. Whereas if we had councils, as you do a couple of places around the country, of independence, then you end up with a debate in public in the council chamber, and I think that to me would be preferable.
Okay, well, I think it's fair to say then that you don't have a political agenda in terms of a political party agenda with the work that you're doing. From what you were just saying there, I think that's very clear. But what we're going to do, we're going to take a break for some adverts now. When we come back, we're going to get onto the incident from a week or so ago, and just talk about your motivation behind why you turned up to the meeting and what happened at the meeting. So stay with us. We'll be back after the adverts and after a song from John Layton.
Hits and memories.
Music you love, people you know.
HCR.
That was Wild Wind by John Layton there. Welcome back to County Matters. I'm Corey Blose, covering for Bill Hensley. And at the moment, I'm talking to Richard Taylor, who's a political blogger and democracy activist, would you say?
I'm
certainly activist, but what would you put as the...
I'm pushing a few different things. Yeah, one of them is sort of making our representative democracy function and just a more openness and transparency in sort of the public sector and how we run our society.
Yeah. Okay, well... let's get on to the actual reason why you've come to talk to us today, which is this incident at Huntingdon District Council just over a week ago. And you've called it the battle to film Huntingdon District Council as the title of your video, a video which you've posted on your blog. And it's an example of the kind of activism that you do. You say it's not the first time that you've done this kind of thing, but could you just tell our listeners what exactly it was you set out to do and what you hope to achieve Thursday before last?
Well, I've been following what our Police and Crime Commissioner, Cambridgeshire's Police and Crime Commissioner, Graham Bright, has been doing in the run-up to the election and afterwards. And I've been going along when he makes an appearance in public. And that's what I found out he was doing at Huntingdonshire District Council. The council publicised the fact he was coming along. The Commissioner himself never mentioned it on his website. So I noticed that he was coming along to councillors. He was going to lead a debate and take questions from councillors. So I was just interested to find out what he's been doing, find out the latest from him, and to see how he responds to challenge from councillors. And this is the kind of thing I've been doing quite a lot. It was his first attendance at a district council meeting, but I've been along when he's been to local meetings in Cambridge and elsewhere before. So it's something I've done before. But on the morning of the meeting, I looked up the council's rules on filming and taking photographs. Now, I'm sure lots of people sort of walk around now with a phone, and I can take video on the phone, I can take a picture on the phone. So I thought it would just be useful to know, in case something interesting came up, was I okay to take my phone out of my pocket and take a picture, or maybe take a video clip if it got onto an interesting subject? So I thought I ought to know what the rules were. So I looked up the Constitution. It's a almost 400-page document for Huntingdonshire District Council. Searched through it, found that there was a section on filming, and the section on filming requires 3 days' notice and permission from the chair. Now, that's their rules. But I was aware that Eric Pickles, the Department for Communities and Local Government Minister, he's been saying now for a year or so that people should have a right to film council meetings, or in fact he's saying that they do have a right to. But all he's been doing is issuing guidance saying that and encouraging it. So I tweeted Eric Pickles on the morning of the meeting, because he recently just issued yet more guidance saying you can go along and film. And I asked him whether this 3 days notice and permission of the chair was, as I put it, Eric Pickles compliant. and I was actually quite surprised to get a response from the minister. But the minister responded, and Mr Pickles said there's no need for that. Essentially, he was giving me the impression that his guidance overruled their constitution, or their rules of procedure, and I could just go ahead and film. So I was slightly sort of encouraged by the fact that the minister had sent this tweet back to me, and I thought I could do something useful and go along and demonstrate to Eric Pickles and other elected representatives who in government what actually happens if you turn up at a local council meeting and try and film it. So I was trying to test out Eric Pickles' guidance, and I think what I've shown and what other people around the country have shown is that Eric Pickles' guidance is not sufficient. He really needs to go ahead and put into law and give us this right to film, record, report on basically council meetings. The guidance is not sufficient. I understand that Eric Pickles is in a bit of a difficult position, because he also supports localism. So he wants to let local councillors make these decisions. But the problem he's got is local councillors have created rules which prevent filming, photographing, and in some cases even tweeting or taking notes on laptops. So they make it as awkward as possible, some of these local councillors, to find out what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, he clearly wants it to go one way, doesn't he? But as you say, the decision isn't his to make as such.
He's
at the moment.
unwilling to put it into law. But I think increasingly one of his responses to both what I've done and people doing similar around the country has been to say, well, he's reluctant to make a law, but if necessary, he might reluctantly pass a law that says, look, we've got a right to film and report on council meetings. Now, what happened when I turned up? I turned up in plenty of time. Eric Pickles suggests you turn up early, and so you don't kind of put people on the spot, as it were. So I turned up 25 minutes early, and I went in very overtly with my camera, which is what, again, Eric Pickles says, so don't try and film surreptitiously. Go and be open about what you're doing, which I think is the right thing to do.
Well, if you're expecting openness from the council, it's best to be open yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's perfectly reasonable. So I got my camera on a sort of 2-metre high tripod, so it was very obvious what I was doing. And I went in and I actually asked the question, which again, following Eric Pickles' guidance, he suggests that you ask the council what facilities have they got for citizen journalists. Now, there are facilities that councils have to provide, but it's very archaic regulations generally. So it's essentially access to a payphone for a journalist to sort of call back to his newspaper and read in a report is how most of them interpret it. That's been slightly improved recently in relation to some meetings where you have to, again, the law just says you have to provide facilities, but it does slightly expand that and encourage them to provide sort of more up-to-date facilities.
So do you mean like sockets and things like that?
What would be useful to me is things like a desk, or access to a desk. Like in Cambridgeshire County Council, they're fantastic. There are desks at the back. They're technically the press desk, but they'll let people like me and other local bloggers and tweeters, and essentially anyone who wants to sit at them, because it can be useful even if you're a campaign group, or imagine if you're a parish council chairman turning up to a district or county council meeting. Actually having a desk somewhere to sit, stick your laptop, stick your notes is really useful. Yeah, access to power, access to Wi-Fi can be really useful. If there's guest Wi-Fi available, why not make it available to people at the meeting, and sort of access to the other things, like access to the microphone feed, for example, to improve the quality might be useful. But like that hasn't happened. But that's the kind of place where we could end up going to. And like the other things, just simple things like access to and from the room, and access to toilets and things if meetings are going to go on for a very long time. Because sometimes if people are trying to make it really awkward to film or to take part in or observe by take part, I just mean observe a public meeting, they can do like the old police authority used to make you sign in and present ID, so you had to go and take your passport along, and then they would escort you with a member of staff to the meeting room, and you wouldn't be able to leave, and there was no way to leave and come back in. So there are some people around that are expert at making it as awkward as possible to allow the public to observe and comment on what should be very public and very open meetings.
It sounds very bizarre for a democratic society, doesn't it, to be escorted around and having to have ID for these kind of meetings. It sounds more like something like when you go to China or Russia, being escorted around by armed guards or something like that, doesn't it?
It's very unusual. The county council, it's only recently that they've stopped doing that kind of thing and making people sign in the visitors book before simply observing a council meeting. So whereas the way I'd like it to be is you just sort of, you're free to walk in,
dip in and dip out as you like,
walking off the street.
Yeah. And what reaction did you get from the councillors when you turned up then with the camera?
Well, the first thing that happened is the chair of the council, Councillor Barbara Elizabeth Boddington, came up to me wearing her full chain of office, and she introduced herself, which was nice, but I thought it was excellent. I was talking to the right person, and she told me that she didn't think I'd be allowed to use the camera. And I then sought some clarification, and I asked, well, surely it would be her decision. I made clear that I was aware of what the rules were, and I told her what I was doing. I was going to try and test Eric Pickles' guidance. She then told me that she would, she had already told me that she didn't think I'd be allowed to film the meeting, but she said that she'd go off and check with her elders. And I discovered that what she meant by her elders was her officers. And then she said she would consult with the legal eagle, who I then discovered was probably the council's head of legal and monitoring officer.
He came and approached you as well, didn't he?
And he was then, she then went away to discuss it with some of the officers, and then he approached me and we had a discussion about what the position was. He told me the position of the council, which I was aware of, 3 days notice, permission of the chair, which I didn't have, and I told him what I was there to do, to demonstrate, well, what happens if you don't have that, as Eric Pickles was encouraging. And this all went on for around half an hour or so. I was repeatedly told that I wouldn't be allowed to film. And the council chair, the video is up on YouTube and available on my website. She gets more and more clear, and she asked me to dismantle my camera. Well, I didn't go along with a toolkit or the screwdrivers and whatever she was expecting me to do to dismantle it. But she was very insistent, and she told me very clearly that when the meeting started, she would be giving a ruling that I couldn't film.
Well, my favourite bit from the video, actually, one of the really funny sections that made me laugh, and as you say, the video's available on your website. We've got it on our Twitter feed at the moment on our website, so if you haven't watched it, you can go and watch it when this show's finished, and you will enjoy it. But the funniest section for me is where she comes over to give you her decision, and she thinks that's it. But you say, no, I'm waiting for a decision from the chair. And she said, well, I am the chair. And you insisted, no, she had to give her decision from the chair of the meeting once the meeting started. And she didn't quite get that. And you just went round and round for about, I think it was about a good 20, 30 seconds of, I want the decision from the chair. I am the chair. No, you've got to do it in the chair. No, I want it in the chair. And that did make me laugh.
That is fantastic. I really hope some sketch writer picks that up. And it ends up in a...
well, it is something from Yes, Prime Minister, or The Thick of It, or something like that, isn't it? It really is.
But I think there is an important point there, that the kind of decisions that people make on a one-to-one basis in private, essentially, sort of at the back of the council chamber, can be very different to what that they do formally in public. And that's what we saw at that meeting. That's why I wanted to see a ruling from the chair in the chair, which is what I requested.
That's it, that was it.
And so while the Councillor Boddington was very happy to refuse permission and demand that I dismantle the camera in person to me directly, when she was in front of the full council, she changed her mind and decided to allow filming of the meeting, and that's enabled me to put a video of the hour and 20 minutes or so that the Police and Crime Commissioner was grilled by councillors, and get that available so people across Cambridgeshire can find out what he's been up to. So I think it was very useful. But we see this in a lot of, as you open things up, as essentially we did when I forced the chair to make the ruling from the chair rather than directly to me, people do change their minds. Another example is when you have recorded votes, which are very rare in local government. But quite often when you have a recorded vote, the result is different to the hands-up vote when councillors don't think that their constituents are going to be able to find out which way they voted. So once they've actually got to put their name to what they're doing, then that can change things. And that, of course, is something that filming can achieve. We can actually find out a little bit more about which councillors voted which way, which councillors said what. I think it will actually... Openness and transparency could actually change the outcome of local council decisions.
So that's very interesting and very worrying at the same time, actually, that you've got this position where people want to keep their vote secret because they're not happy for people to know about their vote, but also that they're then, when they do know, people do know what they're going to vote, they're not voting with their conviction. So either way you look at it, there's something not quite right about both situations.
Well, I think a vote on the basis of conviction is very rare in local government, because we tend to have party politicians, and the rules by which the local parties are operating often leak out. And I've actually the ones that for the Cambridge Liberal Democrats are now available on the internet, and they say that councillors have to decide before they go in and listen to the debate which way they're going to vote, and if they're not going to vote along the party line, they have to have a discussion with their whip. So we're not seeing councillors voting on the basis of having listened to the debate. So I don't know what the point is actually of many council meetings. It's all a bit of a charade, really, if the parties have come up with their positions beforehand, and the debate is, I don't know for whose benefit it is, because there's very rarely anyone beyond sort of one or two of us in the public gallery watching, and so everything is done. A lot is done behind closed doors in these party group meetings.
Okay. I'm going to ask you for your opinion on this question, and then I've actually got a statement from Huntingdon District Council to read afterwards, just for the purpose of balance and give it both parties a say. But why do you think that initially the councillors reacted in a way that they didn't want you to film them? And, was it a result of their dogmatic approach to following the rules, or was it because they want to keep these meetings behind closed doors and they've got something to hide?
Well, I really don't know. I can't speak for them. I think they've got a point that you have to follow the rules that are set down in in the kind of place you're at when you're at a council meeting. It would all fall apart if we ditch the rules, and we ditch the rules on who's allowed to speak for how long, and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the rules are really important, and due process is very important. But yeah, I am concerned that councillors are not as open with the public as they ought to be. They're not as happy talking to the public as they really ought to be. Like councillors, like very few councillors have effective blogs or Twitter presences, and also a lot of them are silent even at council meetings. The number of councillors who don't speak at council meetings and who you just don't hear from is enormous. We have a few characters sort of in every area, but the vast majority of councillors are pretty much completely silent.
Okay, well, this is what Huntingdon District Council had to say about the incident. They said that government guidance was published in June on filming of cabinet meetings. Huntingdon District Council's constitution currently states that recording of meetings are open to the public is only permitted with the consent of the chairman, and provided that at least 3 working days' notice has been given prior to the meeting. Following publication of the guidance, the council will review this section of the constitution. In order to do this, we have a process that must be followed. The chairman did allow the meeting to be filmed in anticipation that the council will amend its constitution. However, on Wednesday evening, the council was unprepared, and like most people, they felt uncomfortable being filmed without prior warning.
Well, councillors should never be in a position of feeling uncomfortable to be filmed. They should be really happy that people are prepared to help them get what they are saying across to the residents of the local area.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because you would think it would be in their interest for the public to see how they're representing their constituents, wouldn't you?
Well, it would be if they were any good. I think that's the whole point. It's going to show up who's any good. It's going to show up what they're doing, what's being done on people's behalf. So I think the good ones will be encouraging it, and I don't want to get too partisan, but it was Councillor Peter Reeve of UKIP. Now, regardless of what you think about UKIP and his policies, I think Councillor Reeve is very much a Democrat, and he's very much pro-openness, and he was the councillor who really, he says, sort of put a word into the discussions that were going on between the chair and the legal advisors, and he's the one who sort of de-escalated the situation, managed to persuade them not to call the police, which would have been a complete waste of police time, and probably perhaps an offence in itself to sort of waste police time in that manner. So thankfully he managed to talk some common sense into the situation. Yeah,
well, we've got to take a break. But before we do, was there any other councillors that supported you on the day?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But of course, well, the chair eventually, reluctantly, and you could tell from the video that she wasn't happy. But I think it was Councillor Reeve who. But again, it's just the whole attitude of them. Like, all the councillors could sort of, they studiously ignore you, which is actually perhaps slightly fair enough, because you don't want councillors to be seen to be taking too much notice of the members of the public who sort of turn up in person. It is good not to sort of have too much sort of direct discussion with the public. But Councillor Reeve, his attitude was completely different to all the other councillors there. He came up to the public gallery, had a chat to a couple of the people up there, including me, and it's just very different to sort of your typical sort of one of the sort of the Conservatives who basically ignore the public and sort of ignore what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to take a break now for a couple of adverts. But if you are a councillor out there listening and you've got you can tell us whether or not you like or do not like to be filmed, and why. Do get in contact with us. Give us a call on 01480 414 104. Send us an email, studio@hcrfm.co.uk, or you could tweet us at HCRFM or find us on Facebook. Please, if you are a councillor out there listening, do get in contact and let us know your opinions on this subject, and you may even be able to put a question directly to Richard as well if you call through. So we'll be back just after these adverts. Okay, we're going to push on now. We're not going to play a song after those adverts because we're quickly running out of time here. We've still got a lot to cover. I'm Corey Blows. I'm covering for Bill Hensley, and I'm talking to Richard Taylor at the moment, who made local and later national press with his attempts to film the Huntingdon District Council last week. Before we move on to sort of what actually happened at the meeting with the Police and Crime Commissioner and what he said, I've just got a question for you about what steps you think need to be taken to achieve more transparency, and what part can technology play in this?
Well, I think we can follow the example of Cambridgeshire County Council, which is very good. They actually encourage people to use social media to report on what they're doing. They have a guest Wi-Fi internet when you turn up. They've got the press desks are opened to anybody, and they encourage photography and filming. And now it's sort of increasingly easy to sort of put the films that you get up on YouTube. You don't actually have to do very much more than that. I put the film of the Police and Crime Commissioner up on YouTube, and it started picking up hits even before I'd sort of commented on it and linked to it.
Wow.
So I think that people will find now the information that they're interested in on the internet. So if you just share it and make it available, but certainly things like Twitter and just putting stuff up on a website, it does make it easier to sort of join in the conversation, as long as your elected representatives are happy to engage. My local councillors aren't particularly sort of responsive online, but my MP is. So, and for me, that's actually it's quite an important thing in terms of who I would vote for. I think I want someone who will sort of communicate in public, and it's not just sort of comments and things that you say as an individual, but it means that you can actually watch their interactions with other constituents and with sort of other local organisations and bodies, and it's just about operating really in a much more public and transparent manner if they're doing it openly online rather than in private.
Yes. Okay, and besides watching videos like yours where people have filmed council meetings, how can people review the performance of their local councillors? Because I think this is something that always seems quite difficult to actually, when you come to vote, a lot of the time you don't actually know a lot about the candidate, and if they're an existing candidate, you don't even know how they've performed over the previous 4 years. You know, their attendance at meetings, how they voted on certain issues. How can you track that kind of thing?
Attendance at meetings is one thing that is recorded, but beyond that, there's very little information, and councillors don't make it easy for you to find out what they've been doing. It's very rare for there to be a recorded vote where you find out which councillors voted which way at a local council meeting. It just doesn't happen very often. And you're saying, how could we change things to make it more open? Perhaps recording more votes might be one way to go.
Yeah, I mean, are they unrecorded because they want to project that they're one council, or is it more because they don't want individual councillors don't want people to see how they voted?
I think the current problem is one of technology and how slow it is to take a recorded vote. A roll call vote where you read out the names of all the councillors and they tell you which way they're voting takes a long time. But what you could do there is you could encourage councillors to focus on things that really matter, discourage them from wasting time in the local council chamber talking about national matters or global matters, and focus on what they're responsible for, focus on sort of what they're there to do. And then I think like people would that might be another way of getting more interest.
I mean, more councils are moving to electronic voting now, aren't they, to make recording easy? But we even saw with the county council recently that even that comes with its own problems, doesn't it?
Well, there was a massive scandal at the last full council meeting. One councillor pressed two councillors' buttons, voting buttons.
That was Councillor Killian Burke.
That was Councillor Killian Burke. Yes, he pressed Councillor Barbara Ashwood, a New Liberal Democrat councillor for Huntingdon. He pressed her voting button when she had left the room just before the most important vote that had been for 16 years at the county council, where the Conservatives were losing a key vote for the first time.
And that was on his own policy as well. Was that the policy he put forward himself about going to the committee system?
I think that's what the vote was on. Yeah, so the vote was on sort of an improvement there in the county council, really, in terms of more scrutiny and more getting more involvement from all parties in making decisions there as they can move to a committee system.
Could there be more politics involved? You know, high politics in trading off and in the committees, and people, you vote this way on this one, we'll vote that way on that, do you think?
Well, I actually think that councils are strengthened when you don't have the one group in control. So I think that's then you actually see some real debate, and that's what we're going to be seeing at the county council now in about a week or so's time. There are motions being put forward on things like a referendum for a toll on the A14, on council tax as well, like council tax freeze. Why is that not being taken up locally? And so we're going to see some real substantive debates now at the county council, because we have. But basically, we've got UKIP and the Liberal Democrats sharing the balance of power with the Conservatives. The Conservatives no longer have a majority.
It certainly will be interesting to watch the council meetings as the next 4 years go on and see how that develops. OK, on to the important part of the meeting that was the Thursday before last, the Police and Crime Commissioner. Why was he at the meeting, and what did he actually have to say at the meeting?
Well, I think one of the interesting points that was actually raised by Councillor Cadware from Huntingdon North. He's a Labour councillor, and he raised the point which I think was one of the most important, which is about how you set local priorities in Huntingdonshire. Now, where I'm from in Cambridge, my local councillors, the city and county councillors, democratically set the local priorities, and they're able to hold the police to account for their performance against them. So they have a high degree of local influence over policing strategy. So not involved in anything to do with operational policing or sort of directing the police in relation to individual cases or individuals, but just it's the overall policy position of what the priorities are. And in Cambridge, they're set by councillors, but here in Huntingdonshire, those kind of local meetings, the neighbourhood forum meetings that used to be held, are no longer being held. So we no longer have that kind of local democratic influence. Now, and that's something that I think that this area is lacking, and I think it's a really important part of sort of really localising policing and having local influence over the police, and ensuring that the police are doing things that the public locally want.
Well, certainly for the area that Sir Graham Bright covers, I think you're right there that local policing and local decisions on the priorities are very important, because if you just look at the vast area he covers, there's such different priorities for different areas. You've got Peterborough and Cambridge. They're going to have completely different priorities to places like Chatteris and March and Wisbech. You know, you've got the market towns like Huntingdon and St Ives against your fen towns. They are so different, aren't they?
So what the Commissioner should be doing is, I think, devolving some of the priority setting to very local areas, and quite like in Cambridge it works very well. We've got 4 committees through the whole city. I've been to Peterborough and I've seen it work there with a similar kind of system. I don't know actually what arrangements would suit various parts of Huntingdonshire, but it might be that in Huntingdon perhaps the town council should have a role. It might be in other places where the town councils are thriving and democratic, that they should have a role as well. But we should have some perhaps parish councils should send a representative to meetings with district and county councils, and they should get together and set the local priorities. I think the Police and Crime Commissioner should be getting into this discussion and working with the local councillors to work out how local democratic priority setting can work in Huntingdonshire. But he doesn't seem to be interested in doing that. That seemed to be the response. He put the ball back in the court of the district councillors. The police are already, they have a duty to consult local people, but what you're missing is that representative democracy of actually engaging with the people who can speak on behalf of everybody, and they're the local councillors, and that's what's not happening. OK, unfortunately we're going to have to cut you short there because we're running out of time now. Thank you so much for coming in today. I think we've covered most of what we tried to get through, but it's such a big area, this, and it's so important in getting local democracy right. But thank you so much for coming down and seeing us today. Stay with us here on HCR 104 FM.